Hey guys, welcome to the shop. I really like a good movie. If I like a movie, I can watch it dozens of times. But if it's a bad movie, it's really hard to watch over and over, and maybe even just that first time. When you first start bending sides, it can be a little bit like one of those bad movies. You know the ones I'm talking about. The Field of Broken Dreams, Star Wars: Revenge of the Split, Gone with the Bend. Those are all movies that I've seen over and over again, and I'm tired of seeing them. I'm going to show you the one thing that I did that really changed bending wood for me forever. I used to break a lot of sides, so I searched for a long time to try and find a way to prevent that, and I finally came up with one thing that works very consistently. I rarely get any broken sides anymore. So I'm going to show you what that is today. We're going to bend some sides. I'm going to show you the finished rosette, and you're going to see the near-death experience that my GoPro went through this week. It's kind of scary. The first walnuts I ordered were just your typical walnuts that you'd find in a store. Just plain old walnuts, but they were the wrong thing. It was a really thin shell and they were kind of beige. You can see these are black. That's because they're black walnuts. And as I cut here, you can see that they're a much thicker skin and they have a lot of membranes in there, and it actually has that face structure in there that I wasn't finding in the regular walnut. I think I spent an hour trying to decide between one of these two shells for our little centerpiece thing here. I like this one because there's a lot of definition, but I'm afraid once we sand down into it, we're gonna lose this kind of nose kind of thing. So I'm worried about that one losing the face when I get deeper. This one, on the other hand, I'm not so worried about it. It's not nearly as thick. I can make the spot there just about exactly that height, and we should keep just about what we see there. So I think I'm going to go with this one, even though I really like this one better. I think this is the safer bet to make sure we still have that face after we sand all this. So now that we've got it picked out, we've got to figure out a way to put it in here. And I'm just going to quite simply use the little chin and roughly the forehead on this line here. That's actually the center line of the guitar. And I'm going to just kind of put it where I think I like it. I like it right about there. So I'm just going to hold it down and I'm using a fat pencil, a carpenter's pencil, because I want a really wide mark on here. I want to, when I router this out, I actually want to go to the outside of the pencil mark, and then I'll have a little channel around this piece, a little extra space that I can put some coloring in to give it a little contrast. Nothing fancy, it's a real simple trick that I use it all the time here in the shop. Alright, so that's my spot. That's where that's going to go. Yeah, you can see the bit sticking out. All I want to do is match that bit height to the thickness of this piece. Actually pretty decent. Alright, so that was easy. I've got a button just for that.
That was easy.
I was out of walnut dust, so I had to make some with the leftover pieces from the rosette. So I just ran it on the drum sander there a little bit, scraped up a bit of the dust, and away you go. So what I did is I mixed up some 5-minute epoxy just to get kind of like a thin painted coat on the bottom of that routed area. Then I just dumped on some of that dust on there, let it sit for a few seconds, and then shook off all the excess. Then I took a little brush to get rid of the rest of it. Well, I've given that a few minutes to dry, so I am going to go ahead and get this piece glued in place. so it doesn't move around. And then once that's glued down, then we're going to fill this all with a clear epoxy. It's a super crystal clear type of epoxy. I just have that sitting where I want it. So now I'm just going to put a little bit of type on, or a little CA on here just to keep it from moving around. Just a couple drops. That'll be enough to let it get attached to that spot anyways. So I'm going to give that a good 10 minutes to set up a little bit. I don't want that moving around when I start putting that epoxy in there. So I want to make sure it's dry. Now it's time to mix up our casting resin. It's a 2-part epoxy that dries really slow. It's going to take overnight, might even wait till Sunday before I do anything on this, but it dries real slow and allows the air to escape. Be very careful with my measurements. Putting the epoxy in is really pretty easy, so pretty self-explanatory. The biggest thing is I didn't want to get too many bubbles in there. What I'm going to do now is start trying to get rid of these air bubbles just by poking in there with a toothpick, trying to pop any bubbles. Funny thing about you guys picking out a cutaway for this guitar is I did not have a cutaway mold for this particular body style. So as where I'm cutting away, I put the GoPro down and mounted it onto the CNC, but as you can see right here, it's going to start coming loose. Well, see, it started to tilt. Now it's tilting even more. And in just a second, it's going to run right up. Whoa, look at that. Just about hits the router itself. And in a second, it twists even closer. But luckily, it falls off to the side, and then the machine actually bumps it over out of the way. And you can see kind of in the highlighted area in the top right corner, that's the router being, or the GoPro being dragged around by the CNC. There it dropped it off, and there it bumps it off the edge of the table. So I'm lucky that happened. If it would have sat in the middle of the table as that router went around, it could have totally destroyed that GoPro. And of course the CNC doesn't know anything's wrong, so it just keeps running and running and running. So after rescuing the GoPro, I came back inside and started cutting out the sides for the guitar. And I like to use something that's called double sides. It's not laminated sides like what the factories use on their cheap guitars. This is actually 2 pieces of wood, of the same type of wood, glued together, rather than having a cheap filler material in between. This way you keep the same tonal properties as the original wood. Once you have your double sides prepared and you're getting ready to bend them, you don't want to do this. You don't want to stack them together where it's got the same grain pattern right over top of each other. That's not going to add really any strength at all. You need to at least do this. Flip it over so that you've got the opposite things going on both pieces. Then when you glue it together, the weak parts here will be strengthened by the strong parts here, and so on. But if you want to make it even stronger yet, you could totally flip it the opposite direction like that. You have this kind of a thing going on. Now the grain is nowhere near the similar than any location, and that's going to make the sides as strong as possible. Now on this particular guitar, from the inside, I actually want to see this book match back at the end of the guitar, so I'm going to go ahead and put this like that so that on the inside we'll still have some of that pattern. Now from the back of this guitar to where the middle of the waist is on this particular guitar is 16.5 inches, so I'm just going to measure up 16.5 inches, put a pencil mark there for now. Now I'm going to put a piece of tape over that. Get out of here, bug. You're bugging me. It's just a bug. And I can't quite see my pencil mark through there. Sometimes you can. So I'll go ahead and measure back over here again, 16.5. And I'm going to put a mark on the outer edge. See that? It's on the outside edge here. And the reason I'm doing that so I can find that mark when it's in the machine. If it's up here, it does me no good. So now that that's marked, all I have to do is get it entrapped here in my blankets and my steel. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle it down, kind of get everything flush against the table down there. Then throw on a couple of clamps just to hold it in place while I put it in the machine. And we'll slide it up over into the machine. Once that tape is on, marked, now I can feed this all through the machine. And at this point, now we can see my little black mark in there. See that? There's the mark I put on. I want to have that right in the middle of this here. So as I bend, I'm going to watch to make sure that mark stays right in that center line there. Now just to kind of hold things in place while I get everything else set up, I'm going to put a little bit of tension down on this. Not too much, just enough to kind of hold it. This, though, as thin as these are, I can actually go down quite far without worrying about breaking this wood. It's one of the benefits of double sides. I'm going to add a few more clamps on, and the reason for these clamps is to keep the heating blankets right against the wood, or as much as possible in contact with the wood. If it doesn't touch the wood, it doesn't transfer the heat into the wood very easily, and that's where you can get cracking. I'm going to put a thermometer in here so I can get a better idea of what temperature we're working at. And we're ready to bend. Now, I've often described bending wood to my students. Every time they bend wood, this is the way I describe it to them. You got about 10 minutes worth of prep work to get everything set up and ready to go. Then you got a couple minutes of just letting the things warm up. Then you got 30 seconds of sheer panic, and then it's all over. So this will be fun. We're going to turn on the heat. There it goes. I'm going to start watching my thermometer. Like I say, this gets a little panicky, so I may not show you every single detail like the thermometer temperature and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want these to break, and I don't want to cook them either. I want you to start watching back here. As it gets warm, you're going to see these, you can already see them starting to droop a little bit from the heat. You might even see the front one start to droop a little bit. We're just about there. Just about there. Oh. Forgot to clamp it to the bench. That's what I said, 30 seconds of sheer panic. Okay, there, we've got steam coming up. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm going to pull this out. Pull one of my clamps over here. hook it up, and I'm going to come down on my waist a little bit. And that looks pretty close. I'm going to turn off the heat so it doesn't get too hot. And looks like I could adjust it this direction just a hair. So there we go, that's in the middle. Alright, so clamp that back down. So now the waist is actually bent. Take these springs up, clamps off here, and just pull it nice and slowly. Just like that, we've got our back bent, or the back part. I'm going to turn the heat back on again for a little bit. This is, I'm pulling this over. This is the tightest bend in the guitar, so it's the most likely place to break. Turn the heat back off because of the steam. There we go. And that's all there is to bending sides. Alright everybody, it's 2:30 in the morning and I still have to edit all this stuff, so I'm going to call it a night. But please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Make sure you share this to all your friends. I want to get as many people involved in this guitar giveaway as possible. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you on Friday.